He used to glide through corners as if gravity had learned his name. Francesco Pecco Bagnaia, the man who turned data into rhythm and precision into art. But in 2025, the symphony has gone dissonant. The Ducati GP25, a marvel of carbon rigidity and aerodynamic obsession, no longer sings to his hands. It fights him, corner by corner, millisecond by millisecond. Its front end loads differently now. Its chassis flex shifted by fractions of degrees that only geniuses and ghosts can feel, and Pecco feels both. Inside his helmet, silence screams louder than applause. The same throttle that once painted poetry now spits defiance. He rolls on, the traction control light flickering like a pulse gone aerodynamic, wondering where the harmony went, in the updates, the meetings, or in himself. Ducati's engineers speak in torque curves and wind tunnel gains. Pecco still speaks in instinct and flow. And somewhere between those two languages, something sacred has snapped. Every lap now feels like an argument between man and machine, passion and precision. Behind him, Márquez rides the same monster with merciless grace, proving the GP25 obeys only those who break it. Pecco tries to persuade it instead, and in that difference lies the tragedy. Borgo Panigale's Red Temple, once his cathedral, now feels like a courtroom, and every race a trial of relevance. You can see it in his eyes before the start lights fade, a flicker of disbelief that the bike he helped make invincible no longer wants to be his. This isn't just a slump. It's the slow unthreading of destiny, the heartbreak of a man outpaced by his own creation. The throttle still turns, the numbers still flash green, but the bond is gone. And in MotoGP, when trust between rider and machine dies, what follows isn't a fall. It's a farewell waiting to happen. And so begins the unraveling, the moment when the legend of Bagnaia and Ducati stops being a love story of speed and starts becoming a chronicle of fracture, leading us into the general context of a partnership built on glory, now trembling beneath the weight of its own perfection. Francesco Pecco Bagnaia stands beneath the blazing lights of the paddock, his visor half lowered, a man once carved from certainty, now shadowed by doubt. The air at Borgo Panigale tastes metallic these days, sharp with tension and the hum of machinery that no longer feels like home. He was supposed to be the perfect marriage of Italian talent and Italian engineering, a union destined to define an era. Instead, the story trembles like an engine misfiring at full revs. In the silent moments before each session, Pecco tells himself, I know how to win, but this bike no longer speaks my language. The Ducati GP25 sits gleaming in the garage, its carbon frame and evolution so radical that it altered the bike's weight distribution by 1.3%, enough to change the way it breathes through corners. Engineers call it progress, he calls it distance. Reporters still speak of loyalty, of legacy, but inside the team, smiles are thin and timed like pit stops. Everything looks perfect from the outside, Dall'Igna once said, until you open the data and see the ghost hiding in the telemetry. The ghosts are real. Hesitations mid-turn, vibrations at lean angles where once he felt divine control. Bagnaia feels them too, crawling beneath his skin, reminders that even greatness can become brittle. Ducati's corridors echo with history, but history does not win points on Sunday. His trophies gleam, yet each one feels heavier, as if cast from expectation rather than metal. The press calls it a slump. Insiders whisper it's an existential fracture. He can still be fast, devastatingly so, but only when the machine bends to his will, and lately it refuses. The GP25 behaves like a mirror tilted slightly away, reflecting brilliance but never aligning it. His hands tremble not from fear, but from memory, the muscle memory of control lost. The factory sees numbers, he feels betrayal. Somewhere between data sheets and throttle traces, trust has evaporated. And as another evening falls on the Ducati box, the once unbreakable alliance flickers like a dying dashboard light, beautiful, tragic, and impossible to ignore. The Indonesian Grand Prix was not just a race. It was an unraveling. The sun burned white over Mandalika, the asphalt shimmering like a mirage, and Francesco Pecco Bagnaia felt the weight of an empire on his shoulders. A week earlier at MGI, he had been flawless, a double victory carved with surgical precision, proof that the old champion still lived. But on that humid Sunday, the bike bit back. He launched from the grid carrying the ghosts of set-up sheets and sleepless nights, only to find himself fighting not rivals, but his own machine. Why does it feel like I'm riding a stranger? He thought as the GP25 twitched mid-corner, its rear tire whispering betrayal. The telemetry would later reveal a minute imbalance, a 0.4 degrees shift in chassis flex under full lean, invisible to the eye yet fatal to flow. It was the kind of detail engineers worship and riders curse. The crash came almost gently, a slow collapse of confidence before contact with the gravel. Dust filled his helmet, tasting like iron and disbelief. "He's lost the front again," murmured a mechanic, but it wasn't the front. It was something deeper, something human. In the garage, silence fell heavier than the tropical rain outside. Márquez, by contrast, danced with the same bike as if born from its carbon bones, a predator that needed no explanation. Ducati's pit wall applauded him, but their smiles carried a quiet fracture. Bagnaia sat alone, helmet on, heartbeat loud, thinking of the perfect laps at MGI that suddenly meant nothing. The GP25 was dominant, yes, just not in his hands. He could feel the paddock's narrative shifting, whispers blending with a hum of generators. The king had forgotten his throne. His style, once a stream of silk through corners, now clashed with a machine that demanded violence. The season became a pendulum, brilliance followed by bewilderment, and Mandalika marked its cruel midpoint. When he walked away from the wreck, eyes fixed on the horizon, it wasn't defeat that haunted him, but recognition. Recognition that the bond between man and machine had broken, and that no championship could repair what trust had undone. The GP25 was designed to be the masterpiece, yet for Bagnaia it became a labyrinth of precision that refused to love him back. Its carbon chassis, stiffer by exactly 7%, altered the bike's heartbeat through corners, demanding aggression instead of grace. Ducati engineers called it evolution. Pecco called it exile. "It's like dancing with a partner who keeps changing rhythm," he confessed after another inconclusive test at Mugello. The new aerodynamic package, boasting micro-adjustable side fairings, created downforce so efficient that it suffocated his signature corner speed. Every lap felt like a dialogue where one voice refused to listen. He begged to mount 2024 spec components, swing arm, clutch mapping, even the old rear linkage, searching for ghosts of familiarity. The result was unpredictable brilliance, a sudden win, followed by chaos. "From the data, it's perfect," muttered a technician, but from his hands, it's chaos. That line became the season's refrain. The telemetry showed no errors, yet the sensation screamed otherwise, an invisible fracture between numbers and nerves. The GP25, dominant in theory, punished sensitivity and rewarded brutality. Márquez thrived where Bagnaia trembled. Ducati's engineers stared at their laptops like priests reading uncertain scripture, unable to decode his discomfort. In meetings, trust leaked away like oil from an unseen crack. The factory's pride clashed with its champion's vulnerability, turning feedback sessions into quiet battles. One insider revealed that Pecco even tested a modified throttle curve with millisecond delays, hoping to rediscover smoothness. It only made him slower. Beneath the fluorescent lights of the garage, his faith in the machine thinned with every adjustment. "Maybe it's not the bike that changed," he thought bitterly. "Maybe it's me." The metaphorical heartbeat of Ducati's empire now skipped at every rev, a syncopation between genius and misunderstanding. And in that discordant rhythm lay the truth. Perfection on paper can still feel hollow in the hands of the man meant to tame it. By mid-season, the garage had become a theater of quiet wars, where words replaced lap times as the measure of tension. Bagnaia's voice, once calm and analytical, now cracked like carbon under pressure. He avoided eye contact during debriefs, answering with clipped syllables that cut through the humid air. Cameras captured his frustration, a helmet thrown too hard, a handshake missed, the forced smile of a champion unraveling. "I have nothing more to prove," he told reporters after Mandalika, and the sentence ricocheted through Ducati's hierarchy like shrapnel of doubt. To the public, it sounded defiant. To the engineers, it sounded final. Gigi Dall'Igna, sharp-eyed and unsentimental, read it as a challenge to his authority. The man who once trusted Pecco's instincts now trusted only data. Inside the pit box, silence began to speak louder than dialogue. Pecco's inner voice whispered, "They think I've lost it, but all I've lost is their belief." Each press conference felt like a cross-examination, each answer a negotiation between honesty and diplomacy. Ducati executives, weary of defending their golden boy, started scripting explanations before he spoke. Rumors swirled of closed-door meetings where telemetry was weaponized against emotion. A little-known scene unfolded in Austria. Pecco refused the pre-race strategy briefing, claiming he needed quiet more than advice. It was his rebellion in miniature. The media smelled blood, painting him as distant, arrogant, broken. The truth was simpler. He was exhausted from fighting both the stopwatch and the narrative. The more he tried to communicate, the more his words were twisted by microphones and expectations. Ducati's press releases turned sterile, polished, bloodless. The symbiosis between rider and factory, once fluent as Italian poetry, became a dialogue in two different languages. And beneath the polished surface of MotoGP's glittering circus, a man who once embodied certainty now stood alone in his own echo, whispering to a bike that no longer answered. Inside Ducati's fortress at Misano, the return of Casey Stoner was meant to inspire, but it detonated something far subtler, doubt. The Australian legend wandered the garage like a ghost from a golden past, watching Bagnaia's runs in silence, his presence both nostalgic and threatening. Engineers leaned closer to Stoner's quiet observations than to Pecco's weary explanations, and everyone noticed. They listened to a memory more than to me, Bagnaia thought, bitterness tracing the edges of his calm. Gigi Dall'Igna moved between workstations with surgical precision, hiding his impatience behind clipped technical jargon. In another corner, Márquez laughed with mechanics, his charisma reshaping the atmosphere like a gravitational pull. Ducati's stable had never been deeper. Aldiger, Bezzecchi, Alex Márquez, each young, hungry, faster than politics. Jorge Martin's name returned like a ghost too. Whispered in meetings, maybe we backed the wrong horse. It wasn't betrayal. It was pragmatism addressed as progress. Ducati's internal rhythm beats to data, not sentiment. And in that rhythm, compassion is a distraction. The factory that once embraced Pecco's gentleness now revered Márquez's ferocity. A little-known fact from those Misano days. Stoner advised engineers to lower the GP25 swing arm pivot by 1.5 millimeters, the same tweak Pecco had requested weeks earlier and been denied. The irony burned. Communication turned transactional, stripped of warmth, like torque figures read aloud in a boardroom. The paddock began to whisper of succession plans, of the next Ducati leader. Even victories no longer shielded him. They were seen as temporary reprieves from an inevitable shift. Bagnaia's supporters spoke of loyalty, but loyalty means little in a team that worships evolution. No rider is irreplaceable, Dall'Igna once said flatly, a truth more chilling than cruel. The garage smelled of oil, ozone, and quiet revolution. Pecco felt it, the unspoken reality that Ducati was already preparing for life after him. And in that realization, every throttle twist began to sound like a countdown. By autumn, the numbers told a truth too sharp to ignore. Márquez was flying, the same bike, the same tires, but a different gravity altogether. Even riders from satellite teams, Bezzecchi and Alex Márquez among them, had tasted podiums while Bagnaia wrestled with invisibility. Each lap time became an indictment. Each sector split a quiet humiliation. The paddock whispered in inevitables. The crown has moved. Ducati's management, once paternal and protective, now looked at Pecco with the cold eyes of an investor assessing diminishing returns. He's still fast, one insider admitted, just not fast enough when it matters. The phrase spread like static through the hospitality tents. Bagnaia felt it too. The shift in tone, the colder greetings, the polite distance of engineers who had already aligned their faith elsewhere. When did I stop being their rider? He asked himself one night, the question heavier than any trophy. A little-known moment came at Sepping. His telemetry screen, once surrounded by attentive technicians, stood alone for 20 minutes before anyone approached. It was symbolic, almost cruel. His leadership, once effortless, now looked performative, a script read from memory. Ducati's internal reports still credited him as a key figure, but the words felt ceremonial. The press began to describe the partnership as a marriage in crisis, a metaphor that stuck because it fit too perfectly. Each weekend felt like an awkward anniversary, obligatory, tense quiet. Fans noticed the body language, the longer stares, the shorter hugs, the smiles that never reached the eyes. Even his victories carried an aftertaste of farewell, triumphs framed as reminders rather than promises. The machine was still red, but the soul of the collaboration had turned gray. He once embodied the Ducati ideal, precision, discipline, elegance, but the brand had shifted to raw aggression and adaptability, qualities Márquez exhaled with ease. The paddock knew it before Pecco admitted it. The captain was no longer steering the ship. And as the season darkened, the silence between them said what no press release could. The era of Bagnaia was fading, one corner at a time. The horizon of 2026 looms like a mirage, visible, alluring, but uncertain in its promise. Bagnaia's contract, firm on paper until the end of that season, feels less like security and more like a countdown wrapped in red paint. Ducati calls the upcoming GP26 a revolution in balance, a phrase whispered in hallways that smell of fuel and cautious optimism. Engineers speak of restoring corner fluidity through a revised swing arm geometry, reducing front-end rigidity by 2%, as if numbers alone could rebuild trust. "If they give me a bike that listens, I'll make it sing again," Pecco murmured to a confidant, the trace of defiance clinging to his voice. The paddock wonders if that faith still runs both ways. Behind closed doors, some believe the GP26 will be his redemption, others see it as his final audition. Jorge Lorenzo, ever the tactician, has urged him to lean on Valentino Rossi, a mentor who knows how to survive the weight of legacy. "Valentino can help him see beyond the noise," Lorenzo said, his tone both empathetic and prophetic. Yet time in MotoGP is a ruthless engineer. It only builds for the future. The Ducati hierarchy is already mapping that future without Pecco at its center, a quiet shift marked by subtle omissions and new faces at debrief tables. The energy once devoted to his confidence now fuels the next generation. Aldiger tests late into the night. Bezzecchi studies data with the hunger of the newly anointed, and Márquez, unstoppable, continues rewriting what limits mean. "Maybe I'm just the bridge between two eras," Pecco thinks, half in sorrow, half in pride. The metaphor fits. A bridge is built to be crossed, not worshipped. The GP26 project could still heal the wound, but it will require both sides to remember why they ever believed in each other. Ducati's engineers, pragmatic as ever, see opportunity. Pecco, ever the romantic, still dreams of belonging. Yet beneath the hum of preparation, a single truth vibrates like a heartbeat through metal. The future of Ducati no longer beats for him. What was once the most harmonious alliance in modern MotoGP has now turned into a slow-motion implosion, a story of faith eroded by evolution. The separation between Francesco Pecco, Bagnaia, and Ducati course has become inevitable because the very chemistry that built their empire, mutual trust, instinctive understanding, and technical synergy, has been replaced by distance, calculation, and suspicion. In the corridors of Borgo Panigale, the whispers began quietly. The champion who once elevated the red bike to legend was now holding back its next revolution. Ducati's obsession with progress, relentless and mathematical, collided with Bagnaia's more human demand for feel, fluidity, and faith. The fracture is not just mechanical, it is philosophical. Pecco still rides as though the bike has a soul. Ducati now builds as if it were a machine without one. After leading Ducati's renaissance and delivering consecutive titles, Bagnaia became its emblem, the calm Italian who turned data into poetry. But 2025 changed the rhythm. The GP25, the crown jewel of Ducati innovation, was conceived to be faster, sharper, and more aggressive, a bike born for domination. Yet, for the man who once danced it through corners, the GP25 became a wall of resistance. Its stiffer carbon frame, altered front geometry, and hyper-aero balance demanded brutality, not finesse. "It doesn't breathe with me anymore," he confessed to a friend after Mandalika, a private murmur that captured a public fracture. What he felt as betrayal, the engineers called evolution. He sought intuition, they sought perfection. The result was silence, not just on track, but between them. Inside the team, Gigi Dall'Igna, the architect of Ducati's modern dominance, grew weary of compromise. His analytical mind could not reconcile a rider questioning the most successful prototype in MotoGP history. To him, the data was flawless. To Bagnaia, it was soulless. When Pecco said, "I have nothing more to prove," during a tense post-race interview, the sentence landed like a resignation wrapped in defiance. Management heard rebellion. The media heard fatigue. What it truly revealed was exhaustion, a champion worn down by fighting not only the stopwatch but his own factory's disbelief. Dall'Igna, ever pragmatic, began quietly shifting focus toward riders who adapted rather than questioned. Márquez thrived, Aldiger tested in silence, Bezzecchi matured in the shadows. Ducati's machine kept winning, but its heart was beating elsewhere. A lesser-known truth emerged from the data rooms. The setup that won Pecco the MGI double was a hybrid, part GP24, part GP25, a compromise that validated his instincts yet embarrassed the factory's pride. When it failed the following weekend in Indonesia, the trust shattered completely. The engineers saw inconsistency. Pecco saw abandonment. From that moment, Ducati's communication became colder, more procedural. Briefings shortened. Feedback was filtered through performance metrics. The rider who once shaped development now merely reported sensations, and even those were doubted. They believe in the numbers more than in me, he admitted privately, a line that encapsulates the emotional gravity of this divorce. Meanwhile, the contrast on track grew impossible to ignore. Márquez, on identical machinery, bent the GP25 to his will, proving its potential and inadvertently exposing Bagnaia's struggles. For Ducati, the conclusion was brutal, but simple. The bike worked, the rider didn't. Inside a factory that measures time in tenths and loyalty in results, empathy became expendable. And as Márquez smiled atop podiums that once belonged to him, Bagnaia's image began to fade, not as a villain, but as a relic of a slower philosophy. Ducati's DNA, once perfectly aligned with his methodical artistry, had mutated into something leaner, colder, faster. In the end, the real reason for the split lies not in lap times or crashes, but in the death of shared belief. Ducati now sees Bagnaia as a champion of the past, a man who completed one era but cannot lead the next. Pecco sees Ducati as a team that stopped listening, one that traded soul for science. The once fluid dialogue between human and machine has fractured into static. And MotoGP, that cruel mirror of evolution, rarely forgives those who fall out of sync with its rhythm. The coming GP26 project might still offer a fragile bridge, a machine rumored to recover some of the lost corner feel, an echo of the harmony they once shared. Yet even if it does, the foundation of faith has cracked too deeply to restore. Ducati's leadership already envisions the future beyond him. Márquez as the spearhead, Aldeguer as the heir, and Bagnaia as a chapter soon to close. In the ruthless logic of MotoGP, emotion is history, and history never wins a title twice. Because when trust dies, no algorithm can revive it, no telemetry can quantify it, and no championship can disguise it. Ducati's future plans no longer revolve around him. For a rider once seen as the face of Ducati's golden era, that is a seismic shift. And that ultimately is the reason why the split feels inevitable.